Hi, Dan Cooper. Welcome to another episode of Cooper's Cogitations. We'd like to deal with the fourth commandment from the 10 commandments at this time. Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, and that thou shalt not do any work. Thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor any stranger that is within thy gate. For in 6 days the Lord made heavens and earth, the sea and all that in them is. The seventh day rested wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. This commandment honors God as the creator. He created all things. And because he created all things belong to him. This earth, the sky, celestial orbs, the animals, the plants. And we're his children. We should obey him. This is our commandment. Now, this is a weekly Sabbath. There are actually 7 Sabbaths listed in the Old Testament and the New Testament. We'll discuss the weekly Sabbath, and then we'll discuss the Sabbath year, the year of release, and also the Jubilee, the 50th year. But right now, we'll start with the weekly Sabbath. On the weekly Sabbath, we remember the Creator, and we rest. Not only do we rest, everything we own rest. Our employees rest. We don't open our business on the Sabbath. We don't have them work. We don't travel on the Sabbath per se, because when we do, people have to give us food, gas, and sometimes a hotel. They have to work. So we're causing other people to work on the Sabbath. In America today, there are industries and businesses that have to work essentially 24/7. They don't get a Sabbath. But those that can, should. Back then, when they rested, they honored God for the creation. Now, it's interesting because in Deuteronomy, that is modified. In Deuteronomy, he says in 5:12, keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord hath commanded thee. 6 days thou shalt labor, do all thy work. The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. And if thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy ox, thine ass, thy cattle, stranger within thy gates, the manservant, maidservant, may rest as well. Okay, remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and stretched out arm. Therefore, the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. So, what do we know about the Sabbath day and how you're supposed to remember and what you're supposed to remember? First thing you remember is that everything belongs to God. He created them and everything belongs to him, and he commanded us to rest that day. Please be cognizant of this fact. Rest does not mean inactivity. We are supposed to be up and doing on the Sabbath day. We have things to do on the Sabbath day to build the church and kingdom of God. But we keep it as a Sabbath of rest. Not only do we keep it as a Sabbath of rest, according to Deuteronomy, they remember that God brought them out of bondage into a promised land. They brought them out of bondage for their families. They couldn't own their children. They couldn't own their sons, their daughters, their wives, their mothers, their sisters. They couldn't even own their own body. They didn't own their labor. There was no political freedom. They were slaves, total slaves, much like we are today in America. You own nothing. Don't tell me you own your house. You have to pay property taxes or you lose it, or your car, or your business. You go out and labor, you have to pay taxes on your labor. Sounds much like Egypt to me. Do you own your children? Well, in some districts, you don't. They give them shots. They put masks on them. They can do abortions for them without parental permission or even knowledge. They could even give them puberty blockers and promote strange feelings about themselves. Some people call transgenders. So you really don't own anything in America. You're a slave. But because they tell you you're free, and because the studied, ignorant people who refuse to read the Constitution, refuse to understand the scriptures, will stand up and say, oh, we're free. Challenge them on it. See what they mean by free. Okay? So it's a day of rest. It's a day of redemption. And it's a day of liberation, but only for covenant man. If you're not under the covenant, it does not apply to you. And throughout this millennium, non-covenant individuals have pushed labor on the Sabbath. Look what happened in Russia with the Gulag Archipelago and so Alexander Solzhenitsyn, where Stalin and Lenin, principally Stalin, Gulag, or a chain of islands. Gulag's a prison, archipelago is a chain of islands. He had 1,000 prisons. Over the 30-something years, about a billion, 500 million people were put in those prisons. 66 million of them died, according to the Gulag Archipelago. They were worked to death. They had machinery there, and they would use shovels and wheelbarrows. If they didn't make their quota, brigades were left out overnight in Siberia. In the winter, they froze to death. They were slaves. They were slaves to work. Often it was meaningless work. That which Stalin had them do was inferior, was never used. It was just work for the sake of work, meaningless work that worked these people to death and violated the commandment, which they did not recognize because they do not recognize God, because they were not covenant people. Okay, thank you very much. We'll continue in the next episode.